Hey there, folks. Let's take a look at this week's astrological report for March 18 through March 24 of 2025. I hope you're doing well. So this week we do have a lot going on, including the fact that we are in between eclipses this week. So it still is eclipse season. It's still wild card season of unpredictability, some volatility, and potential chaos. That's the outer framework of what we're dealing with this week. So just keep that in mind. And we also have the sun here reaching the last 2 degrees of Pisces, the sun conjunct Neptune at this critical degree the next 2 days here. And then we're going to have a big change as the sun will ingress Aries on the world point. That's the equinox. That's a change of season. And it's pretty much the astrological new year. So there is a sense of a change here, but it's still tied into things we've already been dealing with. And I'll explain why I say that as we go through the charts day by day here. Now, as the sun is in Aries for this change of season, it's going to be conjunct Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde. Venus will be backing up here and making a sextile to Pluto this week. That's a second pass. That's a 3-part process for Venus that has a lot to say about markets and value and trade. That is in this overall retrograde process. But the sun will shine a light on important world matters this week, being on the world point, and then Venus is backing up to the world point by next week, and so is Mercury. So still a lot of global dynamics this week that are most likely important information and developments. All right, so then the moon here is going to be waning through the rest of Scorpio. It's going to be waning all through Sagittarius. The moon will ingress Capricorn by this weekend and make a square to the sun in Aries. That's the last quarter moon phase that we come into this weekend, which is the crisis in consciousness phase. I'll talk about the meaning of that as I'm going through the daily charts. And that's pretty much the main aspects that we're dealing with, other than these lunar aspects. Well, now we do have some trines and sextiles and some days that are going to be easier than others. Especially here, even the next couple days might be relatively easy, but still, we are in eclipse season, so just keep that in mind. And then also, perhaps next Sunday, Sunday night into next Monday. Although by next Monday, the moon here will ingress Aquarius conjunct Pluto, so there'll still be some intensity there with that. But overall, there's better aspects than there was last week, but there's still some tough stuff here that we have to deal with. All right, now another thing about what's going on in the astrology this week is that Mars has a lot of say in what's going on. And Mars is still in its retrograde shadow. It's still in a debilitated state here, and it's reaching these last 10 degrees now. But Mars is in charge of all the Aries, and even when the sun reaches Aries, that'll be ruled by Mars. So pretty much Mars is in charge, and it's in Cancer. So we're looking at a lot of emotional intensity and things being run emotionally this week. And there's also a lot of instincts as well that will be coming in with more and more Aries. But again, it all comes back to emotions and feelings that is driving the world right now. And intuition can be a part of that as well. We don't have a lot of air. We have the Pluto. I don't really count that as air. It's an outer planet, but we do have Jupiter in air. So we have a little bit of air here, of being more objective and intellectual about things, but we have water dominant. Water and fire is the main theme this week, which is emotional, it's sensitive, and it's fiery, passionate, and instinctive. So just looking at Mars in Cancer, that's ruled by the moon. Right now it's in Scorpio, and today the moon is forming a mutual reception with Mars. So it doesn't go anywhere else. The moon and Mars are in charge of everything. But even all this over here, all this Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter in Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury in Aries retrograde is ruled by Mars. And Mars in Cancer is ruled by that moon. Then it comes back. So when the moon is in Sagittarius, it's all still going to lead back to Mars, because the moon in Sagittarius will be ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter in Gemini ruled by that Mercury. Mercury in Aries ruled by that Mars. So again, everything is kind of coming back to this Mars. And this Mars is just getting a little bit heated up. It's getting a little more fierce. because it's building up momentum. It's been very slow coming off of that stationary direct. So it's been taking some time to build up a little bit of force and momentum here. And now it is building that up. So things are getting more riled up. There's more conflict. And again, that's because Mars is in charge of a lot of what's going on. Now, unfortunately, when the sun ingresses Aries for the equinox, it's going to be ruled by this debilitated Mars. Mars would be much better for all this Aries if it was in Leo. And eventually it will get back to Leo and things are going to be much stronger than where they are now. But pretty much we're going to have this Cancerian connection for the whole year, basically, based on the equinox chart, the New Year chart. And so we're still going to have emotions, feelings, and the need for safety and security driving the world this year, because that's really what it comes down to with Cancer is safety and security needs. And Mars is really stirring all those needs up in this overall retrograde process. So that will be kind of a theme for the rest of the year. People's emotions and feelings that are going to be driving them, generally speaking. And then in the world context, nations striving for safety and security for their homeland. Now, another issue here, even though it's not exact this week, so you're not going to see it here on this list, Mars building up momentum forward again is building that square with Chiron. So it is tight. Mars is coming into the 20th degree. So that's only 1.5 degrees away right now. So it's only going to get stronger and stronger through this week. So that is a big issue considering that Mars is in charge of so much of what's going on. Having that square to Chiron, that's been in play for a while, but it's going to be peaking in this final aspect this week and next week. So that is, again, about accidents and injuries that people need to be extremely cautious about. So check yourself, check your instincts, make sure that you don't just jump headfirst in anything that could be dangerous or, anything like that. Just take your time, slow down, especially because Mercury here is also being ruled by this Mars and it's retrograde. And with this Aries dynamic, people can be quick with what they say, sharp and quick and changeable here as well. But I think that this is definitely accidents and injuries, especially on the world stage still. That's going to be an issue. And then it can just be everyday life for people. And then it's going to stir up homeland issues as well in different nations and immigration issues. Again, I talked about that last week. And there was, that ruling about immigration for the U.S., but I think it just got overturned again. But basically, it's still, Mars is really stirring up things about the border, about homeland, about homes and families and personal needs and foundational stuff. So on the global stage, it's like this is a big part of what's going on is a foundational retrograde to fix things on a foundational level so that we can then move forward, which we will be once Mars gets out of this entire retrograde process after it passes Pluto. So I'm just pointing that out, that this square between Mars and Chiron is an issue, especially if you have a personal planet around 20 to 22 degrees of the cardinal signs. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. If you have a personal planet, in one of those degrees, especially Aries or Cancer, then you're really wrapped up in that. And it's even more powerful for you personally if you have, let's just say 21, 22 degrees of Aries in your chart and 21 and 22 of Cancer. So if you already have a square in your birth chart in the same spot, and now Mars and Chiron are right on that square, then you're going to be highly affected by this. And you should be extra cautious, and slow down and really guard and protect yourself. And that's the other theme of this for the world, is being guarded and protective, with Mars and Cancer. Now, with that said, even though there's this, tough dynamic between Chiron, so on the physical level, yeah, it can be injuries and accidents, but it can also be internal stuff too. Your own confidence that's trying to go through a process, which should be building up more and more as time goes on. But you still have to look at insecurities and confidence issues that prevent you from taking the initiative, that prevent you from being brave and courageous in your life, that allows you to move forward, out of a place of being stagnant or stuck or something. Now, with that said, as Mars moves forward, it is going to start moving into a trine with Saturn, and then eventually all these retrogrades that up into Pisces that I explained before. So Mars will be moving in to a better alignment as time goes on here, but not so much this week. Now the moon here is forming a grand trine this week, so let's start going through the daily chart. And I'll start here on Tuesday, March 18. The moon is halfway through Scorpio. And it looks like we have only 4 aspects. It's a couple in conjunctions today and 2 trines. So overall, this might be one of the easier days, relatively speaking here. But the moon still is uncomfortable in Scorpio. It's still a debilitated moon, so it's not the easiest placement. And then also, the moon in Scorpio, it talks about the deep end of life. It deals with taboos and all this secret, dirty, raw, hidden things about life and what's under the surface. And Scorpio deals with death and loss as well. And we did see, that Mexico discovered this big mass grave when the moon, came into Scorpio. So that's kind of the themes that I always talk about when the moon comes into Scorpio. A lot of issues of death can come up in the world and stuff like that. But on other levels, it's also about money and resources and investments and looking at those things, having a stronger emotional connection to money and resources and your plans and your needs and things like that. And then it can be on relationship levels as well, this deeper emotional need for intimacy and connection. But as I said last week, I wouldn't expect too much and all that. Keep expectations low during this phase because, again, Venus, the planet of relationship, is in a pretty tough spot here. And it's not the most intimate, not the most compromising. Although with this Mercury-Venus conjunction, that is a lot more helpful than it otherwise would be if these 2 planets weren't connecting. So it's Aries, they're retrograde, they're ruled by this Mars, so it's not the greatest. But it's still, on the global stage, it's the peace talks, and then it's still people generally wanting to be more compromising, be nicer about things, but it's still not the greatest because of the Aries and the retrogrades. So just keep that in mind. But there's still this need to be a little more nicer and speak nicer, but it's not going to work for everybody, unfortunately. And so this moon here that shows that some people want a deeper connection. It might be a little harder to feel like you're getting content or satisfied with relationship or deeper intimacy, unless it aligns with your chart, in some nice way, then you could be the exception. But generally speaking, relationships are still going through this overall process of evaluation. And on the global stage, it's nations doing that. On personal levels, it's our personal relationships. Generally speaking, but also look at your chart and what is Aries for you, because it might be something totally different for you. It's one of your 12 areas of life. All right, so today, it's generally going to be very sensitive and more inward and more private because we do have a lot of water with this water grand trine and Mars in charge of so much going on. So today, the moon and Mars are in charge of everything. So what does that tell you? Moon and Mars, emotionally agitated, emotionally riled up, uncomfortable, or reacting, emotionally, reactive and things like that. But because they're in a trine, I think things can be a little more cooperative and smooth, generally speaking here, for a little bit, especially because the moon is building up trines to Saturn as well. So as the moon goes through the last half of Scorpio today and into tomorrow, and then when the moon, let's see here, ingresses Sagittarius by tomorrow, so the moon is kind of entering this place of the zodiac where it's going to be trine Saturn, the North Node, the Sun and Neptune, Venus, and Mercury. So it starts from water to water and then from fire to fire. So the moon is kind of in this harmony phase for the next couple days. That doesn't mean that stuff can't be happening, though, because of what I explained with Mars and all that. So water grand trine, intuitive, sensitive, but private and trying to maintain control as well. And there's some attachment going on. So working with emotional attachment today for some people, This is a waning phase. It is about releasing still and letting go of things that are no longer needed for your well-being. So Moon, Mars, that's going to be exact later on. Let me align this chart. It's going to come in late afternoon and evening, so tonight. Now, with that said, most of the time, trines and sextiles are going to be more positive, generally speaking, but it's not always the case. Sometimes there's an exception, and I'm not trying to say it's going to happen today, but there's always that possibility because it's eclipse season and Mars is in a tough spot here. But sometimes when there's a trine like this, there's nothing blocking Mars from doing what it wants to do, whether it's destructive or positive. It can go either way for people. There's not a block holding something back from happening. So we can also use that to our advantage this afternoon, this evening, and tonight. There's nothing stopping us from getting something done if you are initiating something or trying to do something here. It's still private, though. It's still connecting to things that are behind the scenes. And Scorpio here has that connection to the 8th house of also what's private and deep and personal. And then Mars being in the more home and family area. So it's still kind of all the more private sides of life and inward that this astrology is talking about today. And the moon is also in conjunct to Chiron. So we're kind of picking up on that Chiron a little bit there tonight as well. And then the moon will be trine Saturn for the last aspect tonight. So again, there's this opening and some cooperation and some energy that's flowing quite nicely today. So it could still be intense and powerful day, but I don't see it as a block or being restricted and limited today. You can actually get things done. You can make progress on things if you are doing anything like that. Or for other people, it's just this need to escape into their own world behind the scenes, do their own thing late tonight here on Tuesday. But the sun here, again, the sun is focused on the last 2 degrees of the zodiac, the ending of the zodiac, where Neptune is. And so even the sun here and Neptune here, it's still critical, even though we have this flowing dynamic. And again, having to be aware of insecurities, sensitivities, or again, things that are holding us back, preventing us from doing what we know we need to do. This new era is going to require bravery and courage to initiate big new things in life. And I'm going to be making a video about Neptune ingressing Aries soon. And just so you know, I have been researching the USA chart and the world for like 40 hours, and I have made like 4 hours of recordings about it. So I have been working behind the scenes on trying to get you guys more videos, but it's just exhausting and I'm burnt out, to be honest with you. So hopefully as we come into the equinox and the beginning of this new season, we'll get more and more energy. But I do plan on putting more videos out when I can, when it's flowing and it's just happening, because I have a lot of other work as well. So I just wanted to tell you that so you know. But let's move this forward here. As we have that last aspect tonight, the moon trine Saturn can keep emotional stability for the most part and emotional maturity, but it's still all feelings based as we go through the rest of today. And then we come into Wednesday, March 19, and the moon is at the last degrees of Scorpio, and we start things off with the moon making an opposition to Uranus. But again, this is 3 o'clock a.m. on the West Coast. Well, 2 o'clock something into the 3 a.m. hour. So still pretty early. It's going to be first thing in the morning for people on the East Coast and still morning hours for people in Europe coming into the afternoon. So moon opposite Uranus brings up financial unpredictability and surprises and changes. And then mood changes. And there could be a change of plans. Now, again, this is super early and it's not going to last all day. So just know that there can be some emotional or circumstances going through unpredictability first thing in the morning here. And then the moon moves past that, and the moon enters trines with the north node of destiny and the south node. So fate and destiny is aligned for Wednesday morning. Whatever happens, it's fateful. It has a connection to the future. We can also tap into things of the past as well. And then the moon is trine the sun as the sun reaches 29 degrees, a critical degree here on Wednesday, as the sun is putting a big spotlight on Neptune. So as the sun and moon and Neptune are all aligned with each other, this is highlighting everything about Neptune, both intuitively and literally of what we're seeing come out. So this is likely to be conspiracies, scandals that are being highlighted, all the stuff I've talked about with Neptune here, reaching this ending of this, leaving this era, this Piscean era. Well, the sun is kind of closing all this out. And then, like I said before, Saturn will follow up and really close everything out. But the sun is focused on everything that's normally hard to see, things that are, again, scandals and conspiracies, but also just things that are behind the scenes that we normally don't see very well. So that's also the collective unconsciousness that is being picked up on, and a lot of private and hidden things that are being picked up on, and we're seeing, again, a lot of conspiracy and scandal talk most likely. But it's also highlighting imagination and fantasy. But this is also the last part of Pisces, the end of the entire zodiac. So this is where the world is generally burnt out and tired as well. I'm not trying to say every single person, but in general, that should be a theme. So people in their own world, people might want to be escaping reality the next couple of days in their own personal ways. That can be through drugs, alcohol being focused on, or whatever their personal escapism is, avoidance, procrastination, all these things that Neptune is highlighting and amplifies. Well, the sun is shining a light on for us to see. So Neptune here also has this connection to other realities, other dimensions of things that the sun is going to be focused on as well. So we could be seeing weird stuff, things that, were hidden that just don't make a lot of sense. And it can really highlight overall sensitivity. And I'm going to say this as well, that with all this Pisces coming to an end, including Saturn here, and Saturn is the most important part of what I'm saying, that this year we're going to likely see a lot of people leaving the earth that are done. Because when the world goes through these big era changes, some people are not meant to be in that next era. They were only meant to be in the ones that they were in. And so a lot of people that aren't meant to be moving on are going to be ending this year and passing away, and especially in regard to like Saturn types, naturally people that have naturally run their course, that are older, that are, naturally going through this end of life. I think 2025 is going to have a lot of that for people. And then it's going to be the end of a consciousness in a way that we've had, of this reality and this consciousness shift that is trying to happen. And as the sun is moving through here, it's also part of that process for this overall consciousness shift that is trying to take place. But everything is also very destined. It was destined last week because of the North Node here and the moon connecting to all that. So it's quite sensitive during this moment here before there's going to be a change on Wednesday afternoon. Moon trine Neptune, and then moon will ingress Sagittarius. So this kind of changes the dynamics a little bit now with the moon in Sag. Moon coming out of Scorpio, the deep end where it's debilitated. This is generally a more of a positive connection that's coming in now. So the moon in Sagittarius, now the moon is being ruled by this Jupiter. So we have a little more fire to the equation. So it's less watery, and even more so when that sun changes signs, of course, the following day. We're going to really come out of the water and into the fire and the passion a lot more. But this kind of starts things off. The mood is changing to be a bigger, more indulgent mood for good or bad. So that can mean negative indulgences, or it can just mean a more positive mood that comes in, more uplifting. But as the moon comes into Sag for the next 2.5 days, it's also going to bring up more opinions. People will have strong opinions and belief systems. But the good thing about this is that the moon is still in relatively good alignment here, from the water to water and now from the fire to fire. So the moon will be in a good way with Venus and Mercury. So this is much better for communication and cooperation in relationships and with other people. And I heard that Trump is having that talk with Putin today. It's like, why, they should really be using astrology, especially even for everything about life, like even the space launches. They really need to wait for the good astrology. They'd be surprised of how well it could work out. Because this would be way better to be having peace talks when the moon comes into Sagittarius trine Venus and Mercury. But that's not until Wednesday afternoon. So it does show a better connection to that, more uplifting, feeling more positive, more social, more outward, more active. And now with the moon here in Sag, I say it all the time, the Sagittarius moon shows that people are going to want to have more of a good time. People want to be more lighthearted, easygoing. They want to laugh. That's a big need for the Sagittarius moon, is to have some comedy in their life and to take things easy and not get too wrapped up in, serious stuff here. But the world is quite serious, and so the Sagittarius moon will have to adjust to that part no matter what. Now, as the moon is in Sag, so philosophy becomes a stronger emotional need for people, generally speaking, the bigger picture and culture issues and traveling, education and learning and teaching and just being more curious and adventurous. This all becomes a stronger emotional need for people. So usually it's about getting out and being busier as we come into this next phase. Now, as the moon in Sagittarius here, it is forming a sextile to Pluto. And Venus is backing up, like I said, to that sextile to Pluto. So we have this minor grand trine between Moon, Pluto, Venus, and Mercury here as we're going through Wednesday evening. And that connects social activity. So Pluto in Aquarius is going to be a big part of what's going on this week. So that's the group and the community and social activity and politics and maybe protests, I suppose, in some places with groups of people like that. And it's also science and technology. That's where the power is. And did anybody notice that there's still ongoing plane and traveling issues? In my opinion, like I said originally, I really think that this Pluto in Aquarius is really talking about the transformation to air travel. A lot of those planes are old. It's outdated technology. And I believe over the next 20 years with this Pluto in Aquarius, we are going to see new aircraft, new forms of travel. It's going to be so much new technology. But in the meantime, Pluto also has to kind of bring a destructive energy to the old technology so new technology can come in. Now, again, that's in general. Doesn't mean every single plane is going to crash or everybody's going to have an issue. In general, the odds are in your favor if you're traveling through air that you're going to be fine. But that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be issues, and it's just like rolling the dice pretty much. But if you know your birth chart, then you're okay, because then you can see what's going on day by day if you know your transits and your progressed phase. So you can tell if you're in danger or not based on astrology. But I can only, talk in generalities here. But generally people are going to be okay. But I'm just saying there needs to be a destruction. That's what Pluto does. It destroys things and then it transforms them into new things. And that's going to be the process for technology and science over this next 20 years. But the moon here is connecting to it in a better way. So there can be some emotional intensity, some emotional empowerment going on here. There can be this connection again to things in the global. We're coming into a phase this week, as the moon is in Sag and Capricorn and Aquarius. It's more of the government, the politics, the culture, and the world stuff that's really going to be significant this week with these signs activated. But again, it's also connecting to groups and friends and community in a better way here, perhaps on Wednesday night. But let's follow the trail of the moon in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter ruled by Mercury, Mercury ruled by Mars, Mars ruled by the moon. So Mars still has a strong connection. And like I said, it's building up that square. So still be cautious, all this week, no matter what you're doing or where you're at. All right, and like I said, the Sun conjunct Neptune, really highlighting everything that's hard to see and understand, and sensitivity, retreat. This also shines a light on film and photography and music and all these more creative things. It also shines a light for a lot of people in this realm of things about spirituality, astrology. Technically, I really want to make it clear that Pisces technically isn't about astrology, but because of this Neptune transit that's gone through Pisces since 2011, it's been enhancing everything about metaphysics, and the tarot and astrology has been thrown into all that and mixed in with all the other things. But normally astrology should be by itself, separate from all these other metaphysical Piscean things, because Mercury rules astrology technically. And it's more of a Scorpio and a Pluto thing than a Pisces thing. Not to say that if you have Pisces, you can't be an astrologer or anything like that, but I'm just trying to say that there is going to be a change, to even astrology and the way astrology is being done. Astrology is going to, as Neptune comes into Aries, people are going to be pulled to, in the context of astrology and other metaphysical things, they're going to be pulled to they're going to be pulled to like pioneering their path and making new discoveries astrologically. So in my opinion, if you're going to be an astrologer in this next era, you need to find a way to be unique and original and not just follow the group and do what everybody else does, and do the same things. Everybody's like doing the same things, saying the same things. That's all the Pisces, where everything kind of gets diluted. And now we're coming into a change where it's not just about reading a book of the ancients and then you're an astrologer and you know everything. It's more about finding things that aren't written, finding new discoveries that you can put out there and taking the lead and not being a follower. Aries is about not being a follower, and that's kind of this new era that we're coming into. So that's a side note. I'll talk more about that as time goes on and the changes to a lot of different things that will be happening. So the sun is kind of shining its light on that as it's crossing over this area and kind of like showing us that transition into the Aries where all these others will also follow up with that, because Neptune is going to be changing this month, at the end of this month, into Aries. That's a really big change. And again, I will make a video about that by itself. All right, so as we move forward through Wednesday night, we had that Sagittarius moon. Things are in relatively good alignment with Moon and Venus at it's the last aspect, Moon and Venus. So, this is late on Wednesday night. It's super late. So for other people, it's super early in the morning and first thing in the morning if you're in Europe. But that's a Moon trine Venus. That's a rare moment with this astrology where we can have better connections with other people, be more diplomatic and compromising and fun. It's just fire, so it's not going to be like long lasting. It's things happen quicker with this dynamic, and it's still about the self. Overall, all this energy is on the self, and even more and more as time goes on here. So it's still about what we want, what we need, and our own individuality, freedom, and independence for the year ahead with what our desires are, and we're trying to work that out. Once Venus gets back to Pisces, things will change a little bit. But this is a nice moment here on Wednesday night for relationship or social activity, but just still be careful of group activity with this Mars square Chiron. All right, then we move into Thursday, March 20th. The moon is still waning through Sagittarius, but aligned with Mercury first thing in the morning. And this is the equinox first thing in the morning as well, the change of season. Now, this is where light and dark is equal, but of course, more and more light. No. Yes. So this is, yes, more and more light, especially with this dang time change thing. So it's a change of season now, Aries season, but it still kind of comes right back down to this Mars in Cancer, which is emotionally driven, safety, security, and comfort, the homeland, family, and property, and your foundation. It's still all about those things as we come into a change of season with this equinox. But it's still a very powerful change because now the sun is considered exalted. The sun is really good in the sign of Aries. It's strong for the ego. It's strong for the self. It's strong for confidence. But of course, with Chiron here, we still have to deal with some issues about our confidence, our security, and our abilities, like I've said, to take a risk and to initiate things for life that are needed, rather than being passive and waiting for somebody else to save you or do it for you. Now this is a focus on doing things yourself and shining a light on personal freedom and independence. But this also shines a light on military activity that becomes a lot stronger, most likely, because now we have 4 points here in Aries, all ruled by this Mars debilitated squaring Chiron. So things get quicker, things start to speed up, which in my opinion, things are already so quick. Like I can't believe it's already Tuesday again. But that's the way it goes. Time is just going by quick, and it's going to start to speed up even more here, or feel like it at least, as we come into this equinox. So a big change of season. It's Aries season now. And it's more fiery and passionate, more driven and instinctive. So check your chart. Where do you have Aries? What area of life is that? Whatever Aries is, for you, that's where the focus and the biggest transits are from this point forward. But it's nice that the moon is trine all this still. The moon trine Mercury can be a good day for producing, creating, writing, any kind of networking, emails, business stuff, communications. This would be one of the best times to do it here first thing on Thursday morning. Now, with that said, it's super early on the West Coast, but it's a decent hour on the East Coast and in Europe. So take advantage of that. Also, if you need to run any errands or take care of stuff, this is the better time to be doing it. I'm not saying it's always going to be perfect because of the other dynamics we have going on, but this should be one of the better times to be working with it. All right. And there's only 3 aspects here on Thursday. That Sun ingress Aries for the equinox, Moon trine Mercury, and the last aspect is the Moon opposite Jupiter. So it's going to be a big day. The Moon in Sagittarius already shows that the needs are big. There's a need for indulgences and going big with whatever you're doing. Big mood as well, big appetite, so to speak. And then you put the opposition to Jupiter, and it can even enhance all that even more as the day goes on into the afternoon and evening hours. So that aspect is going to be exact, in the evening and the night for other people. So Thursday night, things are big and super amplified with information, news, media, opinions, culture stuff. And just be aware of the indulgence factor and try to tone things down a little bit. Things could be over the top somewhat here on Thursday night. Doesn't have to be negative necessarily with this opposition, just things are a little bit over the top, for good or bad. All right, and that's all we got there for Thursday till we get to Friday on March 21st. The moon is still in Sagittarius. 1 second here. So the moon is in Sagittarius, making an inconjunction to Mars. This is where the next couple days get a little more challenging, on Friday and Saturday probably. And that's because there's a lot of squares going on and inconjunctions. So the moon in conjunct to Mars, the feelings and the mood is at odds with our action and our passion. So it could still rile up emotions and feelings because Mars here is ruled by the moon. And Mars still has such a strong connection to what's going on, being in charge of a lot still all this week, like I said. So again, that can be a little bit uncomfortable, irritating and needing to adjust to home, family stuff, property, more private stuff versus things that you're doing in the outward level of life during that moment. And this is also where, the moon will trine Chiron real quick, and then the moon will square Saturn. So there's an opening to that Chiron. I don't know how useful that will be, considering the moon is in this tough spot from this point forward. But there is an outlet, around confidence here that can be better. But then the moon runs into that square with Saturn, and there's a block, there's a restriction of some kind, a limitation in play. This can be where, again, strong opinions and belief systems are being challenged for certain people. And this is where the moon in Sagittarius just does not like this type of energy, because, again, the moon in Sag wants to be lighthearted and easygoing with a sense of humor, and it's picking up on things that are a little more heavy and serious behind the scenes. So this is going to be on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, depending on where you live here. So just kind of, find that time in the on the list and find your local time. Be aware if you're out and about. I would kind of avoid, if you have errands to do, this is not the time to do it. But on the other hand, sometimes when we have a square, we're forced to do things we don't want to do, because squares are about action. They force activity. They don't I'm not trying to say literally they don't force it, because I also want to clarify that from my perspective, the planets don't cause anything. They're not gods. They're nothing. They're not in charge of anything. They're just reflecting a higher power, God's will, because God is in charge of everything on the top. The planets are below him. They're just reflecting God's will. They're not in charge of anything. So it's more of a reflective thing than they're actually making things happen. But we often say, oh, Saturn did this to me, or Mars did this to me. But it's not literally. So just keep that in mind. But during this moment, I would probably avoid, having to take care of serious things if you don't have to, or business stuff, or errands, or, this can be like driving in town and hitting every stoplight and, traffic. You could be pulled over a lot easier with this type of dynamic, things like that. It's just not the best time to be doing things if you don't have to. But like I said, if you have to, then you have to, because sometimes that's why, a moon square can show having to do something that we don't really want to do. So just keep all that in mind. Then the moon is in conjunct to Uranus, having to adjust to some changes, some surprises or unpredictability as well. And then this is one of the only easy aspects for the day, and this is where Venus backs up into that sextile with Pluto. So this adds strong desires and strong passion for people, especially for what they want for themselves, but it also connects the self, personal desires with community and group and politics and, social dynamics. There's a stronger desire for that, generally speaking. A little more obsessive desires could be in the air as well. And there could be, another round of transformation that's happening to relationships on some level, at least on a perspective level, if not literally. And it could also show on the global level that there's a transformation, one transformation connected to a bigger dynamic that's not complete yet, but there could be some transformation to the world stuff around trade and partners and resources and money stuff. Even the sun here now in Aries is putting a big spotlight on the world, the global situation. And this should increase better leadership from different leaders around the world by this point, generally speaking, as well. Because there's some sort of a new power dynamic starting to come in, as the sun will also form a sextile to Pluto as Venus is backing up, and then they're going to have, Sun-Venus conjunction will likely show this week something going on with the global markets and trade and all that kind of stuff. So then we have The moon T-squared the nodes of fate by Friday night. And that'll be early morning hours for other people, New York, and then in Europe. 7, 8, 9. Well, in New York, it'll be late on Friday night, Saturday morning for Europe. So this is where we are at a fateful crossroads with whatever is happening. It could be fateful, it could have a long-term effect on the future. So just always be aware of that as well. When we have a moon T-squared the nodes of fate, you have to be extra cautious that you don't, get sucked into something fateful for bad. But it can also be fateful for good. It all depends. But just know, regardless, there's fate at play Friday night. And Friday night doesn't look like, the best night, in my opinion, to be overly social here. Plus, the moon is then square Neptune from the end of Sagittarius, really challenging beliefs and reality. This is the last aspect for Friday night. It's going to be early morning hours for New York and for Europe, which is better time for it, because this can be emotionally confusing, emotionally sensitive, but also very critical because they're both at 29 degrees here. It can also affect weather and storms and flood events. And there's another thing that I need to point out here. I'm going to talk more about it on videos I do, about Neptune and other transits coming up. But I do want to say, I think I said it last week too, that I'm not so much worried about the economy and all that. What I am worried about is natural disasters, because normally when outer planets change signs, because it's so rare, they usually go out with a bang. And last time, Neptune changed signs, it was from Aquarius to Pisces. That was Japan and the major earthquake and tsunami that happened. So it's hard to say what kind of natural disaster. I'm thinking earthquakes. I still think there could be, other ocean events as well. There's a lot of different types of natural disasters. I think we saw a wide variety last week. Dust storms, fires, weather events, all that stuff is going to be really very strong here. And likely there could be a crisis this year, even for the USA. There could be a big crisis event with some sort of a natural disaster. So I'm going to try to pinpoint that and get more into that in future reports. But that's my main concern more than anything else right now, is natural disasters. But all this Aries is going to also stir up military, conflict again. It's already been stirring up as Mars is picking up that momentum forward again. All right, so the moon square Neptune. Try to not get too carried away with your feelings. This can be like over the top as well, because this is Pisces and this is Sagittarius, two big signs ruled by Jupiter. Luckily, Jupiter's in a smaller sign right now, but it can still be stuff that's over the top here and unhealthy. Could also be the need to escape into your own reality. Things are super sensitive. And overall, it's the beginning of a change to the mood and the feelings, because as we get to the weekend on Saturday, March 22nd, we do have this big change as the sun, or rather as the moon ingresses Capricorn. So a change of the mood and the circumstances for the next 2.5 days, starting on Saturday morning. And this is also where we enter the moon squaring the sun for the last quarter moon. So this continues to show a little more of a challenge from Friday into Saturday as well. Now the moon is debilitated here and things get much more serious. Now the moon and the circumstances here is ruled by Saturn from behind the scenes. Now that continues to be ruled by Jupiter ruled by Mercury ruled by Mars. And here's that Mars square Chiron getting very tight, by this weekend as well. But that's in play all week. So just know that accidents and injuries is still there. But the moon here in Capricorn, now it's all about government on the mundane level. It's a lot of focus on government and changes to government policies and rules. And with the moon here, it's not as comfortable because it's more about being punctual and working and caring about what people think about you, your reputation, and wanting respect, wanting to get the job done. And so what makes the moon here feel good is when you're reliable and punctual and hardworking, and you get the job done. That feels good for a Capricorn moon. So it's also time to be looking at your goals and your ambitions and your future and what you want to accomplish. But some people might run into a challenge as that moon squares the sun. The sun is focused on freedom and independence and doing things quickly. And the moon up here is not on board with that. The moon in Capricorn is better when you take your time, do things right, go slow, and have a proper plan of action, not just jumping head first or being overly instinctive and impulsive like Aries wants to do. So we have this sun, this moon square sun. The last quarter is the crisis in consciousness phase. We also have to work something out in our head and our consciousness, about the future, about responsibilities, commitments, work, duty, and obligations versus, again, what we want for the self, our freedom, our independence, our individuality that's being focused on. And that's where the desire is. That's where the thoughts are, all about the self. Although you want to put it in context to your birth chart, like I said before, wherever you have Aries, it could be in that context. So the challenge between Capricorn and Aries this week or by this weekend, I'm talking about on the mundane level here and the general perspective, but those two houses in your chart, Aries and Capricorn, is where the challenge will be for you. Now, it might not be a big challenge for you personally unless you do have personal planets around these degrees, the first degrees of the cardinal signs. Then you'll really be wrapped up into this. But in general, it's also just a time where there's some emotional challenges, generally speaking. We might not feel like we want to do something. We might, we have to work something out about how we feel about something. There could be some sort of a challenge that comes up. And this is where generally there's less cooperation now. So our mood and our feelings are not on board with our main focus and our desires and our thoughts in this moment. And then the moon is square Venus and Mercury as the day goes on as well. So this theme continues of not as much cooperation. It's a little bit harder to deal with relationships, especially in this case. This is business relationships, more professional type. You have to be professional over here, but this down here is something very different. It could also be about, some people might want their freedom and their independence to do whatever they want to do, but maybe they have work, maybe they have responsibilities and commitments, that they have to do. It can be stuff like that, but it can also be a challenge to feel content and satisfied, not getting everything we want very easily here. You have to work harder to get what you want and feel good with things, generally speaking. And then it's just a little more challenging to communicate, to express yourself and be understood, or even understand your own personal needs and desires and thoughts during this time. They're being stimulated. There's still a strong need for communications and conversations and thoughts and all that, but it's just a little more friction based in this spot. And then this is likely government and political stuff that's going to be pretty strong too with stuff coming out this week. Scandals and conspiracies, like I said, being highlighted. And then the last aspect is the Sun conjunct Venus, though, which is interesting. But it's only a process. This is where the Sun and Venus unite as one. Venus reaches the heart of the Sun to show us something about our desires, about relationship, about commitments as well, perhaps. So there could be important things being highlighted on Saturday that you need to see, especially if you have personal planets here in these cardinal signs in the beginning. But still, there's important things being focused on here for personal pleasure, personal desire. And this is about helping us see this overall Venus retrograde process of where we stand with certain things. So on the global stage, it's talking about nation states and trade and value. This is also could be the turning point. Like I said, I think March is the bottom of this dip for the markets. And yeah, when I talk about the markets, I'm generally talking about the U.S. markets, but it can also work for generally as well for the world. So there could be this change. We have a new realization. We have new information perhaps this week that changes something, the way we're perceiving and understanding value and trade and money and resources and relationships. But they're still not at their best, that's for sure. All right, so that's Saturday. Saturday night, the moon will be in Capricorn. Still not the best night, in my opinion. This weekend is probably not the best for social activity. Doesn't mean it can't work. Doesn't mean you can't do it. But you should just be extra cautious when you're in groups and community stuff with this Mars square Chiron like that. It's very, very tight already. Plus the moon in Capricorn. Actually, the moon in Capricorn is going to form a T-square with that Chiron and that Mars, but that's going to be looking like the next day. So then we get to Sunday here, March 23, and this moon is building up, still in the same spot, government, work, and obligations, commitments, duty, the need to look at your goals and your ambitions still, and just to take care of business. Even though it's the weekend, there's still more of a serious tone and a serious mood. It's less expressive, less self-expressive. And there's not a lot of fun here. You know, there's no Leo going on. Don't have a lot of Sag, Libra. So still water and fire, and this moon in Earth is the only Earth sign we got for the temporary. So there's not people aren't really grounded this week, especially with the Neptune, Sun Neptune. So the moon in conjunct to Jupiter, having to adjust to information, communications, travel, work, and business on two different pages. And then we get that T-square from the moon to Mars and Chiron. And this looks troublesome, actually, and critical. But it's going to be later on, Sunday night. So most of the day on Sunday, we'll just have that moon in conjunct to Jupiter, and also the sun is sextiled at Pluto. As Venus went through that sextile, then the sun followed up with that sextile. So again, it's connecting to the group, the community, politics, science, and technology, and strong social connection that's more passionate. Again, there could be some protests, I suppose, with that. But here's the T-square by Sunday night. Cardinal T-square with Chiron at the apex, ruled by Mars. And that Mars is ruled by the moon. And that moon is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter ruled by Mercury. Mercury ruled by Mars. So it does look critical here. This is where you need to be extra careful. This is where you should definitely be mindful of your surroundings if you are out and about on Sunday evening and Sunday night. Be extra careful. Also, just in your own home and just your own activity, be mindful of what you're doing. Don't jump head first into things. Think about things first, because this can be emotionally reactive in a negative way. But also with the moon square Chiron, how about confidence? The moon is already in a tough spot here, squaring Chiron. It could be like, do I have the ability to overcome something? Do I have the ability, the courage, the bravery for something here? But it could also be accidents and injuries or conflict in some way. Now, it could be more of a political or government stuff here as well, military stuff, because of the Capricorn connection and the Aries. But it's also Mars, homes and families, property, borders, and homeland stuff. So really strong dynamic there by Sunday night. And then things turn. Now, well, the moon does have to reach Pluto, so things are starting to get intense and powerful as well during this time period on Sunday night. But then on the last aspects for late on Sunday night, before we get to Monday there, then the moon forms a minor grand trine with Uranus and the Pisces, and then from Aquarius to Aries. So moon sextile Saturn can help stabilize things despite this strong intensity for Sunday night earlier in the evening. And then the moon trine Uranus opens up an outlet for the tension for the last aspects on Sunday night, more open to changes with Uranus and trying new things. And then the moon will change signs as we come into Monday, March 24. We start the day off in the early morning hours with the moon in Capricorn, but it will be changing signs. But this is where things start to flow a little easier, relatively speaking, but we still have this Mars squaring Chiron building up stronger and stronger, which will perfect by next week. So I don't want you to get a false sense of security because of these easy aspects. I think it can still be helpful for the general day to be flowing, but there could still be some conflicts here with this Mars. So as we start the day on Monday, the moon is aligned with the nodes of fate in an easy way. So it's still a fateful day, and things that are happening have a long-term effect on the future for good or bad. And then we have the moon sextile Neptune, connecting to things that are behind the scenes, imagination, fantasy, and could be more disillusionment. I should have said that before. As the sun was going through all this, it's also the disillusionment of this Piscean era, which has a lot to do about reality and beliefs and the distortion to reality that's changing, that people are going through disillusionment about and seeing things in a new way. So as the moon here connects to Neptune, it sensitizes things, makes things a little more soft, but then the moon is about to change signs and reach Pluto, so it's still quite intense and powerful here as we go through Monday. And that will be the change. The moon will then ingress Aquarius. So Aquarius is intellectual. It's about being a little more detached and objective about things. And with Pluto there, it's an era where people are going to do that in more extreme ways. Pluto adds extremism wherever it goes. So it's going to amplify the extremes of Aquarius. Extreme new ideas is also a part of this new era that are going to be acted upon. So new ideas, it's a new era for group and community and politics. But it's also emotionally intense, but yet intellectually trying to detach from that in an extreme way. So some people can be successful, others maybe not. It's still emotionally intense. And there's a bigger emotional need now for friends and group and community and social dynamics because the moon is connecting to Venus as well. And Venus is headed back to that world point, like I said, as I come back for next week's report. But the moon here shows group, friends, community, politics, more about science and technology comes in, networking, social media, and a lot of intensity with social dynamics. And the beginning of an emotional change and transformation to the mood and the circumstances from this point forward. But there's still something nice about it and the ability to connect to people. It's just more in a freedom type of a way. It's not about smothering other people or being overly emotional and sensitive. Again, it's more detached and intellectual, more fiery and passionate and quick, but still connected to others. So, if you are in a social context with others, the mood still wants freedom and independence and doing your own thing. And then this is where Mercury and the Sun are conjunct as well. So this can be a day of a lot of insights, a lot of important information as Mercury reaches the heart of the Sun. But it's ruled by that Mars squaring Chiron. So it could highlight things that we don't want to see at the same time. But important things, regardless, are being highlighted. But it's only part of the bigger process of this overall Mercury retrograde of what we're perceiving and thinking about and our plans and our ideas. And now with the moon in Aquarius with Pluto, again, in a sextile with Mercury and Venus and the Sun, it's about new ideas for the future. So be on the lookout for important communications, information, conversations, news, something being highlighted, or if you don't hear anything from the outer world to you, it could be your own understanding, a realization of something, perhaps on Monday, to help us see something in a clearer way. And then Moon Pluto continues for most of the day on Monday. Some emotional intensity, but extreme detachment in some cases. And then the Moon sextile Mercury and the Sun, like I said. So the day ends on Monday with this need to be communicative and social, but still free and independent. And that will be by Monday night. So those are the aspects. Let me just move this ahead real quick and just take a quick look for Tuesday. The moon will be in Aquarius as well, aligning with Jupiter. And Venus comes back to the world point, like I said, by next week. And then when the moon will reach the sun for the solar eclipse, it's not the strongest solar eclipse. It's more like a new moon, but we can call it a solar eclipse technically. But also next week, that Mars Chiron square perfects. And then Mars turns into a trine with Saturn, and things will start to get easier as we get into April. All right, guys, so that's what I have for you here. I hope that's helpful. Thanks for watching, and I wish you the very best. Take care.